This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and this is take 2, but it's about 8 months on from when we originally tried. I'm delighted to be joined by trainer Kenny Porter out here in the beautiful and sunny Las Vegas. Kenny, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Let me take this snack mask off. My man Victor Conti snack. I'm doing great. Weather's great. Training's been great. Boxing's coming back here in Vegas. A lot of big fights coming up.
Kenny, there's a lot for us to get through. I remember when we originally tried to do this interview, like I said, it was about 8 months ago. The idea of it was to get to know the man behind Kenny Porter. So Kenny, kind of going back to what we originally was looking to do. Talk to me about your roots into the sport, Kenny, and how you first got involved.
Has it been 8 months?
It's been about 8 months.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow. I thought a lot less than that.
Time flies.
Yeah, don't wait for nobody. So the question is, when I first got started in boxing, wow. We're talking about, as a young kid, 1980. And it's what we had back then called the Silver Gloves boxing. And that was a big thing for us little guys. Kids in my neighborhood. We joined the Police Athletic League. And then we joined the boxing team, or we joined the basketball team. And I tried out for basketball first, and hadn't been trained, you know, to play basketball. So they cut me from the team, and the guys were making fun because we got cut. So I got mad. And I said, okay, I'll wait for them when they leave basketball practice. I was gonna beat them up. So the coach comes out and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm waiting for them kids to come out there, you know. I'm going to beat them up." He said, "You're going to beat them up?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You don't know how to fight." I said, "Yes, I do." I said, "No." He said, "No, you don't." He said, "Let me see your boxing stance." And I put my hands up, but it probably wasn't something that he thought was a good stance. So he said, "Come on in here and let me show you how to do this the right way." Took me in the gym, started training me. And that was my beginning, getting cut from one sport and getting started in another.
What was it like when you first started going into a boxing gym then, Kenny? What's your earliest memories of actually entering a boxing gym?
My earliest memories are a very strict coach who was very strong and disciplined. He did not allow us to wear a dirty t-shirt. He did not allow us to wear jeans. You had to have shorts, t-shirt, you had to be clean. He didn't allow us to put on a pair of boxing gloves for a month. We had to just stand in front of a mirror and work on our boxing stance and our jab and our right hand for a month. Anybody who couldn't make it a month, he got rid of them. Yeah. What's
that like then as a young lad just starting out in boxing? When everybody thinks about first entering the gym, they automatically think, especially as young as what you were, about sparring, about putting some gloves on and hitting the heavy bag. What was it like having to deal with that for the first month?
Everybody wanted to quit, not because we couldn't do it, because it wasn't fun. To just stand in front of a mirror and just throw a jab, right hand, and just hold your hands up every day in front of yourself. It was like punishment. But my next vivid memory was in the locker room, reading the names that were on the lockers of all the older boxers who become professionals. And one of the very first names I ever read was a guy that I looked up to as a kid by the name of Jeffrey Stoudemire. Jeffrey Stoudemire's ring name was Showtime. And that stuck in my head. Since I was a kid, it stuck in my head. And years later, when my son started boxing when he was 4 years old, I gave him that name, Showtime. So we got it from a guy by the name of Jeffrey Stoudemire, who boxed for my original boxing coach, Clint Martin, in Cleveland, Ohio. And Shawn's had it since he's 4 years old. But the name had been floating around in my head since I was a kid. And it just stayed with me, so I gave Shawn that name, Shawn, Showtime, Showtime Shawn. And that was one of the biggest memories that I have of that, you know.
Kenny, what do you remember from the era of boxing you would have watched growing up? Who Who were your idols growing up watching the sport?
Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali when I was a small kid. And then after Ali, by the time I started getting into junior high school, like the 7th grade, that type of thing, Sugar Ray Leonard. And then after Sugar Ray Leonard, you know, right after high school, it would have been Tyson, you know. So it kind of went in that phase for me. Ali when I was very young, and then Sugar Ray Leonard when I was just starting to get into my teens, and then Mike Tyson in the 80s. Yeah, that's how it went for me.
So it talks about the progression of a young Kenny Porter getting involved and becoming involved in the sport. What made you switch from maybe the professional fighting game into the role of a trainer?
Well, everything I was doing from such a young age was not only participating in sports, but it was also coaching in some aspects. I was always the type of kid that took over in whatever it is we were doing. If we were playing football, I was trying to call the plays. When I would leave my football practices as a young kid and go home after football practice, I would gather up a bunch of young kids in the neighborhood and start teaching them what I had learned that day at practice. And even took it as far as getting T-shirts made with their names on it and getting a T-shirt for myself that said Coach. That was as young as 14. So as young as 14 years of age, I was already being called Coach.
So when did the point come in your life, Kenny, when you thought, I can become a very well-respected boxing coach?
Never thought about that. That wasn't my intention at all. When I was participating in boxing, when I was boxing in the early 90s, things, for lack of words, weren't very organized in the gym that I was at. So I was starting to look at things differently, like, hey, I don't want to get a phone call and go take a fight in Canada against a guy I never heard of who's the Canadian national champion. I don't want to do that, you know. I didn't like the way that they set the guys up for their fights. I definitely wasn't happy with the stories I would hear when the guys would come back from the fights. So then I started saying, well, maybe I could, you know, train somebody. So as a young guy who was still boxing himself in my early 20s, like 24, 25 years old, I started training a 14-year-old kid because I saw he was talented, he needed help, but nobody was helping him. So I take this kid all the way from no ranking to a #1, fighting for a #1 position in the United States, Junior Olympic Championships. And this kid, DeAndre Johnson, he was out of Akron, Ohio, winds up in a championship against a guy by the name of Hector Camacho Jr. Yep, Hector Macho Camacho Jr. He was the son of Hector Camacho, Macho Man. And he lost to that kid, and he finished #2 in the nation. And once he came back from his tournament, we got back from the tournament, all the older trainers in the gym, you know, they're all over the kid there, telling the kid he's going to be the next greatest thing, he's the best thing, and he don't need to train with a young guy like me because I don't know what I'm doing. It's what he told me, you know. And he was confused by that. But I was only maybe 10 years older than him, you know, 24, 25, he's 14 years old. And he believed that the older guys were probably right. So one day, his uncle was in the gym, and his uncle tried to start a fight with me. He said, man, you're not training my nephew right. You ain't teaching him how to hit the bag right. You're not teaching him how to work out right. You don't know what you're doing. You're too young to be training my nephew. And the guy acted like he wanted to fight me. And I thought about it. I said, this is a setup. If I fight him, then I'll upset the kid, and the kid will leave me, and they'll get exactly what they want. So I thought, okay. I'll just walk away from the situation. And the next day I came back to the gym and they expected, you know, I was going to be mad and I was going to fight him for my fighter, you know, right? But the next day I came in with this little kid, 4 years old, Shawn Porter. And that's when I started training Shawn, that next day. And then he goes on to be two-time world champion.
With DeAndre, when you was training, when you had to go through that process of potentially losing him as a fighter, was you frustrated because you had guided him to the lofty heights, as you just mentioned?
I was somewhat frustrated at the beginning when it first happened, but I kind of see, you know, as I alluded to earlier, I was seeing different things that were going on in the gym, how different guys were getting phone calls to go fight guys in different states that they had never heard of, or they didn't know anything about the person's history in boxing. They didn't know anything about how much experience the guys had. They didn't know anything about how much money was being presented for the fight, the travel expenses. They didn't know anything. So I was seeing a lot of different things that were going on. So when this happened with DeAndre, I was able to look at that and say, wait a minute, I've seen these guys do this kind of thing already. And what they're doing here is they're trying to make me go up against his family member, so he'll have to choose between me and a family member. And one of the older coaches actually said to me, he said, hey, you know, blood is thicker than water, Kenny. And I said, yeah, it is. So the next day I brought my blood in. I brought my son in. And what better way to get revenge against somebody but to be successful? And so many years later, I see DeAndre. He's a grown man, you know, an adult, married, children. He even sent me a Facebook message or an Instagram message one time, but he said this to my face. He said, I wish I had never left. I wish I'd have just listened to you and stayed with you, you know. But look at how it worked out for us. It worked out just the way, I mean, it couldn't have worked out any better. I couldn't have written it out and said, okay, today I got the kid that fought for the #1 championship, and tomorrow I got a 4-year-old that's never had a pair of boxing gloves on tomorrow. Which one do I want? Well, this one's my son. So I win no matter what. Even if Shawn didn't go on to do the things he did, I would still be a winner because I'm his father.
We will come on to Shawn shortly, but just to stick with yourself, Kenny, talk to me about your work with the US Olympic team and the national team and the experiences that you had working with a number of top-level, elite-level fighters.
Well, you know, of course, like I said, DeAndre Johnson was my first kid, and he made it to #2 place in the nation, fighting for the #1 spot. And then after him, I wound up training quite a few other guys before Shawn was old enough to even box, because he was only 4 when I started him, so he had 4 years before he was able to compete. And some of the other guys that I work with made it to Olympic trials and different things like that. And then, of course, Shawn and his brother became national champions multiple times. I can remember 1 year alone. 1 year, I don't know what year it was. I have to go back and do the math. But 1 year alone, him, his brother, and another fighter that I had named Tiger, all 3 of those guys won the national championship the same day, 2 times that year. I mean, that's great, you know, not to just have 1 national champion in a tournament, but to have 3 in a tournament and then repeat it again before the year is out, to do it twice in a year. And Kenny and Shawn pulled it off again themselves. They became national champions again. So there has been, you know, those guys directly that I work with. But then when I started becoming a regional coach for USA Boxing and then became a national coach for USA Boxing, I work with so many different guys. Early on, guys that are now world champions. I was in training camps with both Charlo brothers when they were 14 years old. moving on from there, there's been multiple other champions that I work with, Dominic Wade, different guys as we moved on into the international competition. Errol Spence, I had him on a world team. I was his head coach in Russia and his head coach in the Ukraine. Also, the World Championships. I was on the World Championships team as the technical coach, and that had Jamel Herring on that team. Errol Spence was on that team. We had Ramirez that's getting ready to fight Taylor. He was on that team. Marcus Brown was on that team, who was a world champion at light heavyweight. Multiple guys on those teams and those international squads that I work with. And in the World Championships, Ramirez, the first night, draws Lomachenko. In the World Championships, I meet a young kid, a heavyweight by the name of Anthony. Joshua. I'm sorry, I'm about to call him Johnson. Anthony Joshua, yes. Anthony Joshua, young kid, he makes it to the finals of the World Championships in Azerbaijan. And he should have walked away with a gold medal, but a lot of different things happened in his scoring that we didn't agree with, and he didn't get it. And he moves on to become a world champion in the professional ranks. The guy who won the fight that day in the World Championships, we've never heard of him if he even became a pro. So I've had all these occasions to work with all these different guys. Of course, in the professional ranks, again, Manny Pacquiao. We went to camp with Manny twice, 2010, 2011. We were in the Philippines for six weeks both times. Worked with Freddie Roach for 2 years over in California at the Wild Card. We had Carl Frampton here training at the Porter High Performance Center. And at the time, he had a young Taylor with him. The same Taylor that's going to be fighting Ramirez here in a few weeks in Vegas. And we got a chance to see Taylor up close and personal. Shawn sparred with him. Very good back then. I knew he was going to be a force to be reckoned with. So I've had occasions to come across all of these different guys. Even Andre Ward trained here at the Performance Center for his last couple of fights. Fight he had here in Vegas. Can't think of the guy's name he fought.
Kovalev?
Kovalev, yes, Kovalev. He fought Kovalev, and he trained at my place. And of course, some of the different coaches, a lot of the different coaches that I've had a chance to train with and mentor with, like Freddie Roach, Barry Hunter, my brother, Andre Ward's coach. A lot of these different guys have given me an opportunity and also shared their knowledge with me. And I just try to give that back to the kids.
Can you just...
I'm sorry, that's Virgil Hunter, by the way, Andre Ward's coach, Virgil Hunter.
Can you just, on the training front with the youngsters, with the Olympic talent that came through, when you was training them, can you always tell instantly whether or not they would adapt successfully to the professional ranks?
No. It's not very easy to tell who will adapt to the professional ranks. It's a little easier to tell who won't adapt to the professional ranks. That's not being negative. That's just for my eyes watching things. So I've got, as a young coach and assistant coach, on all those junior teams and junior Olympics and stuff, and then becoming a head coach on the national teams and then the international teams, the Pan Am teams, the 2012 Olympic team. This is 31 years for me now, non-stop since 1990, right? That's not counting the junior boxing that I did in the 80s. But, you know, just as a young adult into where we are now, my eyes can see things differently. Things slow down now. Now when I watch Mike Tyson fight, I don't ooh and ah like I did when I was 21 years old watching him fight. You know, now when I watch Sugar Ray Leonard fight, I don't ooh and ah like I did when I was 13, 14 years old watching him beat Tommy Hearns or fighting Marvin Hagler, those kind of guys. So I see things totally different. They slow down now for me. I see things totally different. And it's easier to see who won't make the good transition than it is to see the guys that will.
Kenny, when we tried to do this interview 7-8 months ago, like I say, you mentioned to me a story about a ghost while she was on the US Olympic teams. I think you might have said you was with Robert Garcia or what have you. Can you just retell that story for me? Because obviously we didn't get to put that interview out in the end because we couldn't finish it.
Nah, that was Manny. Used to be
Manny Robles.
Manny Robles used to be Ruiz's trainer, right? Yeah. So we were in Azerbaijan, right? Yeah, we were in Azerbaijan. The World Championships. Excuse me, it's 90 degrees here in Vegas, so I had to drink something. World Championships. And we're in these small rooms. And this one night, I'm on my laptop. Manny's over there, he's on his laptop. And, you know, we're just doing what we do, maybe studying boxing or something like that, looking at film or whatever, not paying attention to anything else. And at some point in time, I'm laying in this little small bed with my laptop next to me, and I noticed that the laptop started to, I guess you could say, work by itself or something, like, you know, like someone was pressing the keys on it, but it wasn't me. And I looked at the computer and I said, "What the hell? Is this computer over here, you know, working by itself?" So I'm looking at it. So I looked over at him. I said, "Hey man, did you see that?" He said, "See what?" I said, "Nothing, you know." So I'm sitting there and I look over at the computer again, and it starts to type something. That's not making any sense. It's not even words, but, you know, different letters are being typed, not making any sense, not even words. And then I went to touch the computer. Before I could touch it, everything disappeared, right? I said, "What the hell?" So I'm looking, and what happened next is unexplainable to me to this day. The computer, the little laptop, began to just raise up off of the table. It came up off the table a little bit. I don't know how much, but it definitely, like someone was picking it up or something. I jumped up and ran out of the room, down the hall. Coach ran out the room, down the hall, right behind me. We're both in our underwear. Yeah. And the kids are in the hallways, you know, they're on their laptops and stuff. And they said, "What's going on, Coach?" I was like, "Nothing, man. It's a ghost in that room. I'm not going back in there right now." And the funniest part about that, that was funny. As you think about it, run down the hall, realize you're in your underwear, other coaches running down the hall right behind you in his underwear. That was funny. But the funnier part was the next day, we got off the elevator, and there was a wall with like a big portrait, and under the portrait, there was something written about the portrait. And we read it, and it said that this ground was sacred ground, and it was haunted. And this ground in this area right here where we were at, where this hotel was built at, was haunted. So you make whatever you want to make out of it.
Did you get some sleep that night though, Kenny?
No. We didn't sleep very much. We stayed in the hallway with the kids all night. No, we stayed in the hallway. The kids, all night long, we stayed in the hallway. They were on laptops. This was one of the nights we said, okay, y'all can stay out here. We'll stay out here too, yeah. Nobody had to fight the next day, so we were okay.
Strength in numbers, Kenny. Moving forward and moving on to your time as a professional coach, and talk to me about working with Shawn and what made him stand out to your other sons, because I remember when we tried to do this interview previously, you mentioned that you had other sons who began in the sport but never quite reached the same heights that Shawn did.
My other son Kenny was a national champion like 7 times.
In the pro ranks, I meant.
No, he didn't turn professional, and that is the thing that determines what everyone considers to be, you know, a good boxer. You can be a great amateur, win the nationals. You can be a great amateur and make it to the Olympics and things like that. But, you know, you can win an Olympic gold medal. But if you don't pull it off in the pros, people kind of feel like you didn't make it to the expectations that they have for you. So my son never turned professional. He just graduated from high school and kind of started doing other things with his life and didn't pursue boxing anymore after that. I never called him to say, hey man, you need to train, you need to box, you know. I think when he was 16 he won a gold medal over in Sweden in a world tournament. And he was 16 and he fought in the 21 and over division. They called me from Sweden and they said, hey, the guy that we had in the 21 and over division didn't make his flight. Can we move Kenny up? And this was summer. He was 16. He would turn 17 in the fall. I said, go ahead, do it. And they said, we believe he can do it. I said, go ahead. He wins night after night. He wins the gold medal. The next year, he goes to England, 17, his junior year in high school. And he goes to England, and he gets a silver. He actually loses in the championship to Billy Joe Saunders' brother. Not Billy Joe. He had a brother that boxed. You remember him?
No, do not.
Yeah, he had a brother that boxed. Yeah. He lost to Billy Joe's brother. And then after that, he just didn't pursue boxing anymore. But, you know, Shawn was one who stayed on the path. He stayed focused. He listened. And he's been successful because of that. So, yeah, that's, you know, that's the difference between some guys who are very talented and the amateurs who don't make it to those heights in the pros. It's, you know, it's discipline and it's focus.
Just quickly stopping and starting there, Kenny, before my camera time's out. Talk about working with Shawn then. When did the point come, just working with him in particular, when you thought you have a potential world champion on your hands who was not only world champion but also your son?
Well, you know, I never thought about it like that, and I still don't think of it that way today. We took it one fight at a time. We knew because of his amateur background and amateur pedigree, the things that he had done, the guys he had beaten in the amateurs, which was, you know, an immensely talented group of guys. Everybody from Dominic Wade to Danny Jacobs to Demetrius Andrade. The last guy to beat Demetrius Andrade in the United States is Shawn Porter. And Demetrius hasn't lost to anybody in the United States since then. The kid over there in the UK, not the UK, Ukraine, what is his name?
Usyk.
Alexander Usyk. Yeah, Usyk. Alexander Usyk. Great fight. Tall kid, left-handed. Shawn's 5'7". This kid's about 6'2", 6'3". He's left-handed, and they had a knockdown, drag-him-out fight, and we pulled out a decision. You know, there's been other guys that he had been very successful against. We had a two-time national champion here, Edwin Rodriguez, national Golden Glove champion. He was also U.S. champion. And he was trying to repeat as U.S. champion. Shawn beat him. He tried to repeat as national Golden Glove champion. Shawn beat him. Our Olympian, Shawn Estrada, Shawn met him in the U.S. championships, beat him. Met him in the Pan Am trials, beat him. Didn't get a chance to fight him in the Olympic trials. And that's just the way that went, and Shawn wound up being the alternate on the team. We know if we had got a chance to fight him, we had beat him twice. We were pretty confident we'd beat him again. So that's the confidence that you go into the professional ranks with, but you just take it one fight at a time. And you look at your history and you just take it one fight at a time. So when we got to that championship level against a Devin Alexander, we just felt like we were prepared for the fight and we'd be successful. And he won that fight and he was successful.
Just to pick that one back up there, to quickly change my battery as it was just about to die. Apologies for that. Going obviously back to Shawn, one fight in particular you mentioned there was Alexander Usyk one. Certainly whenever people speak about it, it just raises a smile because of when you look at him now in the pro ranks, very different weights, very different sizes. What do you recollect about that bout, and how can it be that two fighters can kind of just go down very different routes in the pro ranks with regards to weights and categories?
Well, the things that were going on in Shawn's life when he was in the amateurs, he was playing other sports, basketball, running track and field, playing football. All of those sports he was playing built muscle, and they put weight on him. And he needed that weight to compete in football and, you know, run those drills and take those hits and make those tackles. So when the football season would be over with, I would never say to Shawn, hey man, we need to lose 20 pounds to box. That just made no sense to me. So I would tell him, wherever you come in at as far as going into these tournaments, whatever weight it is, you know, that's where we'll compete at. So I think he was on the football field. He's probably like 170, 72, somewhere along there, you know. And he'd come to the gym after the season's over. He's training. And he'd lose about 5 to 7 pounds, and he'd be 165. So I said, okay, we'll compete. We'll go. We'll see what happens. It just so happens he would go, and he'd win and beat everybody, and he'd be number one. U.S. champion, national Golden Glove champion, Pan Am, wins the Pan Am trials. He did all of those things. But it was in a different weight class because he was competing in other sports. Once he graduated from high school and he was done playing other sports and things like that, and he decided he wanted to be he decided he wasn't going to play football anymore. I said, okay, we're going to go ahead and start losing some weight so that we can box in a weight class that is better, you're better suited for your height. And so we came down to 154 pounds, which was pretty easy, no problem. His first pro fight was 153, but the guy he was supposed to fight didn't show up, so we had to fight a little bit heavier just to make the fight. Those things happen in the beginning of guys' professional careers, and it wasn't a big problem for him because he had competed at a heavier weight in the amateurs. So he did. His first title fight, NABO, junior middleweight title, he weighed 153 pounds. But on fight night, after we weighed in at 153, and then the next day when we fought, I'm looking at the guy we're fighting. The guy's 175 pounds, easy. And we're like, okay, we can't compete at this weight if we're going to give up 15 pounds on fight night or 10 pounds on fight night, you know. So I think at that time, it was just a conscious decision to change his diet, change his lifestyle, change his eating regimen, to come down in weight. So if you looked at his box rec, he came down in weight slowly. 1 pound at a time. And that first championship fight against Devin Alexander, it was an IBF title. So he weighed in at 146.5. And then the next day they reweigh you to make sure that you're not above 10 pounds. The next day he was about 150 pounds. Alexander Usyk, he was 165 when we fought him. And then he stuck around and made the Olympic team. And he made it at 200 pounds. Yeah, he stuck around another 4 years for the Olympics, and he fought there at 200 pounds. So he was still growing. Shawn was done growing, but, you know, he needed to figure out where he wanted to fight as a professional. And I made that decision. And he's been able to win 2 world titles in that weight class.
Okay, let's come on to Shawn as a pro. Let's touch on the first win, the Devin Alexander win. What do you recall from that victory for the IBF strap?
The thing I recall is that, you know, I haven't watched the fight in a long time, but the thing I do recall is that Shawn was very hungry and wanted to fight and wanted to win. And he showed that every round. And I think he put on a very dominant performance in that fight.
What was it like for you yourself to see your son become a world champion for the first time?
I normally just don't get excited about things. So him winning that championship, I did not get overly excited, but I was definitely happy for him from a standpoint of being a father, being a trainer, being a manager, and helping him to fulfill his potential. Very, very happy, very proud. But moving on, I think now I'm more proud of him. Some of the other accomplishments that he's made. Also, you know, again, he won another world title against Danny Garcia. But you know, and I'm very proud of that. But he's making some great decisions outside of the boxing ring that I'm very happy for.
Just to stick with his career, and another fight I want to get your thoughts on, the Kell Brook majority decision defeat. Mm-hmm. What was your take on that night and the scoring for it?
I don't even know what the scoring was. I just didn't feel that Shawn had lost the majority decision that night. And not only did I not feel that he should have, I didn't feel he should have lost that fight, but you know, there'll be people that'll watch this interview and they'll say, oh, he lost. You know he lost. And you just saying that because he's his father. The question I ask you is, do you think Shawn Porter could have went to England and grabbed Kell Brook and held Kell Brook all night long and not get disqualified? He would have been disqualified if he had went to England and grabbed Kell Brook all night. There's just no way possible. And then the next question I'm going to ask is, why is it okay for, you know, Kell Brook to hold as much as he did and no points be taken away? But if Shawn Porter had been holding Kell Brook, U.S. fans would have booed him. I mean, it's like, come on now, I need you to just look at both sides of the coin here, or both sides of the situation. There's no way Shawn could have went to the UK and we had a strategy. Every time Kell Brook gets ready to punch, we're going to grab him and hold him. It's impossible, you know. And then, you know, right after that fight, he got dropped from the top 25 of the IBF, which would not allow him to ever rematch the kid. And you've never heard a conversation ever even come up of him ever rematching him, which is just, you know, it's ludicrous if you think about it. But those are the type of thing that go on in boxing. So, you know, if you agree with the decision, fine. If you disagree with the decision, okay. But the questions I'm asking is, you know, would Shawn have been able to go over there and hold that guy that much? No, he would not have. Should he have been dropped from the top 25 of the IBF rankings after the first loss? That doesn't make sense. But, you know, those are the things that happen to you in boxing. So we move on and we win another world title. And we don't look back because, you know, that guy never wanted to fight us again.
Let's move forwards then. Let's talk about that second world title win, the victory against Danny Garcia, this time for the WBC title. Just again, your thoughts looking back on it now.
Great fight. Unbeknownst to a lot of people in that fight, Shawn had a lot of different things going on that didn't allow him to be 100% going into the fight. And he believed in me and believed in what I said and believed in what I did. And the people behind us believed in it. And so we went ahead and we put him in the fight. And he was not 100%. He had some serious injuries going on. But we put him in the fight, and he was able to pull it off. He was able to win. He was able to be successful. And so that would be one of his greatest victories and one of my greatest coaching victories. Because when I say he was not 100%, Shawn had a cast on his hand until 2 weeks before the fight. The whole entire training camp. Surgery. Nobody ever knew that. Surgery on his hand. The Los Angeles Lakers doctor performed the surgery.
Was there ever a temptation to pull out of a fight then here in McKinney?
No. No, there wasn't. Everybody, or the people closely involved, myself, Shawn, and the other people that are very closely involved, I told them what was going on, and I said, give me a chance. Just give me a chance to train him. Give me a chance to get him prepared. And I did. And he pulled it off. We got the cast off 2 weeks before the fight. When you get the cast off, now you go into therapy. You don't get to use the hand. You just go into therapy. So we went into therapy. And then therapy only lasted, a week, because the next week we're going to fight. And so we wrapped his hand up, and he found out if it would work on fight night, So, yeah, that would be definitely one of the most memorable fights and greatest accomplishments, to coach somebody through an entire training camp with, I couldn't even allow him to get in with live sparring, because if I put him in with live sparring, he would be tempted when they hit him to hit them back with that hand. So he used one hand the whole entire camp, which was southpaw.
Kenny, moving forwards, the defeat to Errol Spence, it was a very competitive fight. Mm-hmm. Looking back on it again, what do you recall from it?
Got hit with quite a few low blows in the beginning of the fight. Quite a few low blows. So much so to the point where I'm asking the referee to help me protect my fighter. He's getting hit low. And the referee said, I can't do nothing about it. And then that's when I knew this just ain't going to go my way with this particular referee telling me he can't do anything about a low blow. Horrible that somebody could look you in your face and say that to you when they have a job to do. There was not one warning about the low blows, to the point where as one round Shawn comes back to the corner, I knew something was wrong with him. I said, hey, what's going on? What's going on? What's wrong? Nothing. I said, listen, you got to tell me what's wrong. I can't help you if you don't tell me. He said, I can't feel my legs. He got hit with so many low blows that his legs had become numb. So then I changed the game plan up. I had to change the game plan up because his legs were numb. We changed the game plan up. And that change in the game plan helped us to be a little bit more successful. The scoring on the fight wasn't very consistent to me. There's no way possible that you could tell me that the kid only won 4 rounds out of 12, but that's the way some of the judges saw it. And the WBC judge actually saw Shawn winning 8 rounds out of the 12 rounds. But this is a part of boxing. For those of you out there who have not figured this part of it out yet, boxing and scoring is someone's opinion. That's all it is someone's opinion. It's not like basketball, you shoot the hoop and it goes in and we see what the points are. It's not like soccer, you kick the ball, it goes in the goal, we see what the score is. At the end of every round, someone sitting around the ring gives their opinion. Your opinion, my opinion, everybody else's opinion is not going to be the same. So until they figure out a way to make scoring not subjective, not somebody's opinion, but make it an actual, some way of scoring what they saw that round, it's never going to be everyone in agreement with decisions. Because how can you be? If you truly think about it, it's someone's opinion when they're watching the fight and they say, I think this guy won that round, or I think that guy won that round. But it's not done by an actual scoring that we can see that goes up on a scoreboard. If you kick a field goal, we see what the score is. If you shoot the three-pointer, we see what the score is. But with boxing, it's just someone's opinion.
Kenny, just to pick that one back up there, my SD card just run out of space. We was talking about judging, going back to the bout with Errol Spence, just picking back up there.
Yeah.
And what you was talking about was what needs to be done moving forwards, or what should be looked into.
Well, I just think that until we get some type of scoring system that everyone can see and everyone can agree upon, that everyone says, okay, now we can see how the scoring went this round, and now we can see why this person won this round, and there's a definitive winner of the round, not someone's opinion. You know, we're going to always have these discussions where someone felt that the scoring wasn't consistent, wasn't fair in a certain fight against a certain fighter, and it happens.
Kenny, what is next for Shawn? I know the Terence Crawford bout was spoken about a few months ago. Was that ever close at all, or was that just more talk than anything?
Well, it never got any further than, you know, we on multiple occasions, myself, Shawn, had conversations, and with our advisor, we've had conversations that we wanted to fight. It never got any further than going to Bob Aaron's office and saying, hey, Bob, we're here to make the fight. And Bob talked to us, and he said, well, I'm not going to make an offer today. And I said, well, you know, can you give me a ballpark of the offer? What direction are we going here? And he said, well, we're not going to make an offer today. And then it just ended. They never pursued it. And now I hear that Shawn is no longer the mandatory. He's been dropped from the #1 spot. Someone else is in the #1 spot now. And no matter how you look at it, you know, you don't need to take my opinion on it. You know, if it was a mandatory situation, if it was a situation where we should have been in a position to fight the guy, we told the guy we wanted to fight him. We told his promoter face to face we wanted to fight him. Why didn't they make the fight? They don't want to fight. There's no way around that. They just don't want to fight. And as far as we're concerned, you know, we can't try to make you fight us. You don't want to fight us. Shawn is getting ready now. He's training. And we should be, you know, back in the ring in the next 8 to 10 weeks.
One name from the UK that has been mentioned, Kenny, is Conor Benn. Any interest in that fight whatsoever? If the money was right, if the offer was right, would you guys entertain it? Because I know you are looking at the world scene. Don't wrong, I rate Conor Benn highly, but he isn't quite ready for that. But if the offer was right, would you guys consider it?
No, see, because we're not fighting. He's not fighting for just the money. He's in a position in his life that he's doing really good things in the boxing ring and then outside of the boxing ring, working for 2 networks. So he's allowed to the freedom to say, no, I'm not going to fight a guy that, you know, isn't a top-rated fighter or isn't someone that I choose as the top guys on my list to fight. Which top guys he's looking at is Errol Spence, Bud Crawford, Manny Pacquiao, those type of guys. anybody who blames him or says, you know, you should go and fight someone else of a lesser status just to please the fans, that's not where we're at in his career. He's definitely beyond that. He's surpassed that. He doesn't have to take that type of fight.
Just a couple of quick ones I just want to get your thoughts on, Kenny, before I leave you to enjoy the rest of your day in this beautiful weather. You mentioned Jose Ramirez earlier, we've mentioned Josh Taylor. They obviously both collide next weekend. What are your thoughts on it as somebody who's seen them and worked with Jose very closely, and you've seen Josh Taylor in the gym?
Yeah, I've had Josh Taylor in my gym. He sparred with Shawn, and I knew when this happened, I knew this guy one day would challenge for a world title, not just challenge, but win one. Very impressive fighter. Jose Ramirez, I had him on the World Championships team and also on the Olympics 2012 team. Very, very disciplined, very intelligent guy inside and outside of the ring. It's one of the most impressive things about Jose outside of the ring, his business acumen. He's one of the smartest young boxers that I know, if not the smartest young boxer that I know, with his business decisions outside of boxing, outside of the ring. Yeah, these guys are going to clash. Right now, to me, it's a 50-50 fight. But, you know, if I had to lean one way or the other right now, I'd be leaning towards Jose. But am I shocked or surprised if Taylor pulls it off? No, not at all. You know, Jose is one of my guys, and I'm gonna back him up 1,000% all the way through this fight. But Josh Taylor is an immensely talented fighter, and there will be no shocks, no surprises on my behalf if this fight comes down to the wire, you know, and it goes his way. But yeah, I'm pulling for Jose.
And final fight, I just want to get your thoughts on. It's been spoken about up at heavyweight, an undisputed bout between Anthony Joshua, somebody who you've watched previously as an amateur, and Tyson Fury. What would be your thoughts, Kenny, if we get that one over the line and the pair of them clash this year? What are your thoughts?
Tyson's hard to beat. Tyson Fury is hard to beat. In the ring, he's hard to beat. He's harder to beat outside of the ring. I don't think any of these guys can compete with Tyson outside of the ring with his, you know, with his confidence, his intellect, his quick wit, you know, the things that he says. He's extremely quotable. He's a bigger-than-life character. And so, you know, I see if they ever make this fight, I definitely see Tyson winning it.
All right, Kenny, we will leave up there now, and I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. I appreciate your time this week. I appreciate you arranging for me to come and see yourself and Shawn earlier. Thank you for your time, and thank you for speaking to Boxing Social. Thanks
for having me, man. And like I said, as we were talking earlier, I'm very proud of you and all the things you're doing, and much success to you.
Kenny, thank you, and obviously the same goes back to you and Shawn.